He is a sports betting analyst at Draftkings and host of the PGA Tour live show on ESPN Plus. My guy, Reid Fowler, back in the building. Reid, great to be with you, sir.
Alex, thanks for having me. Yeah, thank God I did some good stuff on the Bettapalooza. I think we won. I think we went 1-1 on those bets, but here to talk more golf.
Oh, you did great. All right, so let's talk some golf here. I'm all in on this sport. I'm loving betting it, but I want to talk to you as a sharp here. For our audience out there, what are some general tips and strategies you use week to week in betting these tournaments in the PGA?
Yeah, I'm glad we start off with this question because it's so important to know, have a plan, have a strategy. And my first one is know your bankroll. Right? Know how much you want to bet on it before you go into it, because there's so many bets that you can make in a golf tournament. And what we don't get from other sports like football, or maybe you get some in the futures market, is these huge payouts, right? These plus 1,600, plus 50, plus 5,000. You don't see those very often, so you can get very enticed by the potential winnings. But strategy first is to know your bankroll and be responsible about it before you get into it.
So, Reid, when it comes to past performances and either whether it's recency bias or just how players have played on courses in years past, do you factor that in a little or a lot when you're making your projections for upcoming tournaments?
Yeah, Alex, it depends, right? And I think this kind of goes part and parcel to that first question, a little bit more specific to golf in general, is that you want to know which tournament you're betting on. I know that sounds silly to say because you're looking at the tournament in front of you, but there are some courses that course history plays a lot more of a factor. For instance, this week at the Arnold Palmer Invitational, we see that guys who usually do well, and we'll get to that in a little bit, tend to do well in future performance. The Masters, right? Some of the majors, we see that those are more conducive to guys who are playing well at that course, who maybe not have played well leading into it. Other places, maybe in the California, the West Coast swing, maybe some other tournaments here and there, you want to focus more on current form. Probably for me, I'm going 70% in current form, 30% course history. But when we get to those tournaments that involve more course history, I'm leaning a little more heavy in that.
And when it comes to the actual courses, I mean, I've played Tiger Woods back in the day, so I know a little bit about a little bit. But when it comes to the elements of courses, how important is that to factor into? I know guys, of course, that can drive the ball better on certain par 4, par 5s that are more heavy can do better. Then there's, of course, you have water holes. There's a lot out there that you can look at, but just kind of breaking down the elements of the course for us and how you factor that into capping.
Yeah, it's painting a picture, right? You always try to tell yourself a story. Let's say you're betting aside in football in the NFL. You're telling yourself a story on how that game's going to go. Well, it's the same thing in golf. Is you're saying, okay, based off of this course, is it long? Is it over 7,500 yards, 7,400 yards? Okay, well, I know that distance might play a factor. Maybe it's shorter. Maybe it's a par 70, so there's 2 less par 5s. So I'm focusing on the guys who do well on par 4s. If there's a lot of water like we have in the Florida swing on every single course, Alex, I want guys who can stay away from those big numbers. So it paints a picture. But I will say this, a lot of times, and I'm guilty of this as well, is you get caught into the analysis by the numbers and saying, okay, this guy does well in strokes gain approach. Well, here's another tidbit that I'm not giving away. Strokes gain approach is important every single week. So you can't get too married to the numbers. You also got to know, can this guy win? Because if we're betting outrights, you want the guys who are essentially going to win, and their win equity is high. So maybe not current form, or maybe not necessarily a course fit, but a guy who just plays really well.
Well said. And when it comes to new bettors in this space, I know there's a lot of exciting different ways to mix and mingle at DraftKings with bets. I'm a big fan of top 10, top 20. You have the make the cut, miss the cuts. Anything out there for new bettors that you really like that you would advise them to fire on outside of just winners outright?
Yeah, so that's the easiest, well, quote unquote, the easiest, right? Just said this guy's going to win, but it's the hardest because you got, in a regular field, you have 156 golfers, and you're trying to choose the one guy who's going to win the golf tournament, right? Or if you're betting on the LPGA, the one female, the one woman who's going to win the golf tournament. But those are extremely hard to do. And so my favorite in terms of beginners is, like you just mentioned, Alex, the top 20s, the top 40s. those are, obviously more conducive. Your payouts aren't going to be as high, but you have the ability to get inside the top 20, right? If you have a bad round, let's say the course is playing difficult on Sunday and your guy played really well in the first 3 rounds. Well, Sunday is a lot harder because it's windier, maybe it's raining, maybe it's hotter, so the course dries up, and he doesn't do that well on Sundays. Well, you got that top 20 bet to back it up. So a lot of times too, if I'm looking at a guy who has longer odds and I have him out to win and he's, getting down to that course on Sunday and he's about to win and he doesn't necessarily do well on Sundays, you back it up with the top 10, top 20, top 5, and that includes, right, that gives you a little bit of insurance of getting that bet to a winning bet. So I love those top 20 bets, especially for beginners.
I love that, Reid. And how about on the flip side, looking at bets to stay away from? There is such a thing as a trap bet. Again, this is such a interesting sport to bet where you're getting incredible payouts, but it's so hard to predict the winners. But anything to stay away from you would advise for new bettors?
Yeah, I mean, the props are always fun, right? Like hole-in-ones, how many, especially when we get to TPC Sawgrass and number 17, how many water balls? That's always a fun one. You can go over, under, whatever that line is going to be set at, either for the tournament or a specific day. Look, I'll never tell anybody to not bet those because obviously I want you to have fun when you're doing it. But those sometimes involve less analysis. Now, if that's your cup of tea where you just want to say, hey, I want to sprinkle some money on this and not necessarily have to think about it, then more power to you. I advise you to do that. But probably those prop bets are a little bit less conducive of the analysis. But again, golf is so variant, right? You can get a guy who's playing really well and he tin cups in and he puts 7 in the water. You have no idea. And so, all bets are pretty risky. But at the same time, right, golf, it can pay out. Like if you were following me, hopefully you were, you had a couple of guys in the beginning of the season who hit on some pretty big numbers. And again, that's a really, really fun and a nice payday. So bet what you can, but it kind of goes back to that first question is bet responsibly.
Always. All right, we'll get you out of here with this, Reid. The Arnold Palmer Invitational, a fan favorite, coming up this weekend. Can you throw us a little Costco sample of your best bet here or something you're looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you want guys who play well in Florida, right? In the Florida swing, you want guys who can play well in the wind, who stay away from those big numbers. And even though this guy missed the cut last week, so maybe we're getting a little bit of value here. Sungjae Im, he's one of my favorite bets this week. He plays these courses so well. He just couldn't get everything going in terms of his approach last week, but he was one of the best on Thursday and Friday in strokes getting out of the tee, and that's what you need this week. So give me Sungjae, Alex.